When did this happen, in this sexual abuse that happened? When did it happen? When was it made public? And then the New York Times article in particular, what is the response you guys have to the New York Times article?
Yeah, well, more than I want to interact with the New York Times article, I'm here because I don't want what we're trying to do to lose momentum and steam. My background, my bloodline has sexual abuse in it. I have just seen the outright devastation, the generational devastation that causes. And so because I have spoken so aggressively about this subject, I wanted to be able to come and talk about what's occurred and what we've learned and what's happened. And so the case mentioned in the New York Times article, the abuse took place 6 years ago, almost 7 years ago now, this summer. And if I could keep it high level, we learned that we were contacted by the family in February of 18, I believe. We immediately asked them to report. We double reported that day to the Cedar Hill Police Department, and then that set off a relationship between the family, a detective with the Cedar Hill Police Department, that began to kind of coach us on the way forward after that. In September of 2018, we had a meeting with all of the parents that we could find that were at that camp 6 years ago. And the thing, like, I was dealing with it not just as a pastor, but as a daddy. My oldest daughter was a cabin away from where this alleged incident took place. And so we're working with the family, we're working with Cedar Hill Police Department. We call a meeting with all the parents that we knew and could find that had a child at that camp, and then had Detective Hernandez come and actually be in the meeting with the parents, because we were being told there's certain things you can say, certain things you can't say. And so we just didn't want to look shady at all. And so we actually let the parents ask Detective Hernandez anything they wanted to ask. That weekend, I stood up in front of the entire Village Church, September of 2018, and I announced to our congregation that there had been an incident at a camp 6 years ago, that Detective Michael Hernandez was leading point, that we were walking alongside of the family. The statement that I read that morning was actually edited by the family. The family added several sentences about how they felt loved and supported and cared for. And so this was not an incident that the media broke. This was an incident that we broke. We took our cues, like I said, from the detective and the family throughout the entire process. Even when it became clear that they were dialing in on a former employee of the Village Church as the primary suspect, the detective asked us not to mention his name for fear that it might obstruct the investigation. And so as I've seen some of the criticism of how we've operated here, the primary criticism seems to be that we should have released the name. But I'm not quite sure how that conversation was supposed to go. Had the people that can kind of look at it in retrospect and say you should have released the name, the New York Times article would have looked very different. It would have been how we actually obstructed the investigation because we released the name. And so there's really two components. There's the case itself, which I think we are an imperfect church with imperfect people. I make mistakes. I am painfully aware of my limitations, of the weaknesses of the Village Church, of our failures. They're numerous. And I don't think I'm naive to that. But when it comes to reporting as soon as we heard, taking our cues from the detective and the family, I'm not sure what we could have done different. Now, the other aspect is the aspect of care for the family. And so one of the things that's not in the piece that was run on us is this family is actually at a campus site of ours, about 25 miles from, or about 25 minutes from where I office and I work. We just did the best we knew how to care for them. These issues are far more complex than one would imagine. And so we regularly, an elder regularly, contacted the family. I'm still in introspective mode about what I might have done different, of how we might have approached this differently. But some of the gaps there are that we were even in conversations with his family for an hour last Wednesday. One of our elders talked with them, just trying to see what we can do and how we can come alongside, and what is it that you need from us. And so I'm not, listen, I want to just say the Village Church and the name Matt Chandler in 200 years won't mean jack squat. Nobody will care. Now, I'm not the kind of author that's going to turn into a classic, right? I'm just not that kind of author. You know, I think I referenced Justin Bieber once or something. Like, that's not the stuff that makes it into the classics. And yet, what you and I can do in this moment of history can be talked about in 200 years. That you and I would be serious about the protection of the most vulnerable. That you and I could be serious about not defending our institutions, but doing, like, convictional, courageous leadership, doing what's right, even if it hurts, and really getting behind this opportunity that God's given us to do the right thing and to live out of biblical convictions and to be a picture to the world of what it looks like to be serious about the least of these. And again, this is very fresh. I'm on sabbatical. I wasn't even supposed to. Notice I don't have a blue tag. I got stopped trying to get in here. And I'm not here to save face. I'm here because I don't want you to think we don't need to be serious about these things. We shouldn't be courageous about these things. I hope that all the resolutions that JD is working on and that team has worked on pass. I pray that these stories would decrease, that we would be far more serious about victims of abuse, and that our churches would be very safe places. I'm so desperate for the Village Church to be that. And so that's what we've been trying to navigate, and we've been, I guarantee you, we're not navigating it perfectly, but we're doing the best we know how.
Have you met with the family? You personally?
I have met with the family. I met with them after that first meeting with all of the parents, with all of the parents of kids who were at that camp, circled back around with them. Then we have dialogued back and forth, both via email, and I have written them some handwritten notes. But I am true to the article. I am not running point on care, which means that there have been 2 elders that regularly are connecting with that family, regularly communicating with that family, regularly coming alongside that family. But I have not been. I have reached out at times, but I am not the primary one running with their care.
Y'all called the police immediately when y'all found out about this?
The day we found out, there was a timestamped double report. We asked the family to report, and we immediately reported.
What's the ongoing relationship been like with the police department?
Well, we're in no man's land right now. And what I mean by that is Matt Toney has been arrested. He bonded out. They're waiting for a trial. So that at this point, we are passive participants in this. We have done what we know to do, which was not only did we say, hey, this happened, but we were also ones that outed the fact that it was a former staff member of ours. Like, the narrative that we've been interested in protecting the Village Church is just inconsistent with reality. Like, we were the ones that put on the front page of our website, told our people, put on our social media outlets, it's a former staff member of ours. God help us.
What would you say to those in this room, large churches, small churches? What have y'all learned from this that you think pastors need to learn?
Yeah, I just think you've got to have the courage to take a punch to the head. And you've got to, listen, the Village Church, regardless of that piece that ran, will shrink in dollars and size because of what happened. And look at me, who cares? I need to, and this happened to me in 2015, except I think we were far more guilty in 2015. I need to be able to put my head on my pillow at night and know that I pleased the Lord, and that I'm going to stand in front of him one day and give an account for my life. And brothers, sisters, if I could encourage you to live in such a way that you remember that you're going to stand in front of him and give an account for the power that you held, the opportunities that you were given, for good and for ill. And by the grace of God, we're all going to be loved on that day. But there should be some seriousness about how we enter these spaces. And so the way I would want to encourage you is, and we're learning this, this is complex and in a very real way unwinnable for everybody. There's no win here except to try to love those who have been abused, to come alongside. And it is a long road, and it's a complex road, and it's a road fraught with misunderstanding. And so all I can say is you do the best you can, seek outside counsel. We're just not experts in this. Like I was not trained in any of this. I don't know that we have a lot of it. We had to seek outside counsel to come in and help us. And that's what I talked about on the panel last year, is that we brought in Ministry Safe, but we also brought in Love and Norris to help us with spouse abuse, because we didn't know how to spot it and what to do when we found it. And so I think what we've learned is that churches are going to be better for finding subject matter experts and pulling them in. Because, Pastor, I don't care how many books you read, the fog of war is going to be discombobulating and confusing and lead you to not quite know what to do.
The article alleges that you guys made public that you fired him for alcohol abuse and not sexual abuse. Is that true? And if so, why?
Well, we fired him for alcohol abuse because you can't be an associate children's minister who continues to get drunk. Do you want me to say more about that?
Well, so it was never made public to the congregation, obviously.
No, so the people that knew that we fired Matt Toney for drunkenness were the men and women who had volunteered at the Village Church in our kids ministry. He was beloved. He worked there for 13 years. I've got a 1-hour audio clip of Matt Toney talking with my daughter before her baptism, drawing out of her belief in Christ. And so he was a beloved man. So I wanted to meet with those volunteers and say, here's what's happened. Here's why we're doing this. And so that was communicated long before this. So there are multiple members, key members of the Village Church, who knew exactly why we were firing Matt Toney. And I don't know if people understand how communication works at a church our size, but we're going to let a small group of people know exactly what happened, and then as it spins out to, if you're a church of, and again, most churches aren't as large as others, but if you've got people that aren't members of your church but just love to come on Sunday because they like the music or they're banged up and they haven't really joined yet, but they're just kind of in the orbit, then there's some family business that really they don't need to know. There was no reason for me to run Matt Toney down for firing him for drunkenness. But I can tell you this, as soon as we found out that he was indicted and an arrest warrant was issued on this case, we made it public, put it on the front page of our website. So we weren't interested in protecting him in such a way that might put someone in danger.
I want to ask two questions, and then we'll kind of shut down. Have you been willing, you personally, and then also Village, been willing to talk with the media about this?
So again, this is size dynamic stuff. We did interact with the New York Times. I did not personally interact with the New York Times. Again, there are things that I'm good at, and there are things I'm not good at. And so we have a man on staff who does almost all of our communications. If you don't work with the media often, there's a whole, I guess, dance or art or science to it. And so there were at least 3 occasions that we interacted with the New York Times. I don't know if it was the author or the Times itself, but I understand my guess in the article, we didn't answer all of the questions that maybe she wanted us to answer. We didn't answer them like she wanted to. I haven't talked to her, so I'm not sure where, but I do know for a fact that we dialogued with the New York Times.
I'll get you out of here on this. Moving forward, is there anything you would do different, anything you kind of learned that would be helpful? Because again,
yeah, and that's why I'm saying I'm in this period of introspection. Should I have personally taken point on care of this case? I want to own that, but then I start to go, well, they're 25 minutes away. They don't attend physically the campus that I'm at. It seemed more logical to me that the elder or the campus pastor of that church would be the one that sees them every weekend, sees them out at the grocery store, sees the children, sees that it seemed better for me to let that man run point and then just do whatever I could to encourage and to reach out when appropriate. And so I'm not sure, like I said, I'm still in introspection about this. It's funny, the Times piece hit, but for us, we've been with this family for a long time. We've been walking alongside of them for a long, long time. And up until recently, their feedback to us was we were doing a very good job of caring for them.
Well, we'll definitely need to continue to pray for her and then the family and for care. We're going to put up something on Baptist 21, may already be up, but Baptist 21/care that's going to address just several resources that are helpful when it comes to this conversation. And then certainly this is a conversation that needs to continue. We don't want to be running away from this, and Matt and them have not run from this, but also know that this is a very serious issue that needs to continue to be addressed. So we're just going to dismiss here. Thank you guys for attending the Baptist 21 panel, and hope to see you guys next year in Orlando.